A very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and in our headlines, multi-millionaire former insurance executive Leroy Paris on 4 charges ranging from theft to money laundering. Legislative changes to PSV operations in Barbados. No cutting of staff at Sagicor. And in sports, Raymond Reefer improves his chances of making the Windies starting test 11.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
In our top story, former CLICO chairman Leroy Paris has appeared in court on a number of charges ranging from fraud to tax evasion. As Lisa Broom tells us, Mr. Paris was not required to plead to the indictable charges and was granted $1.5 million bail.
The 75-year-old former insurance boss is facing 4 charges. He's accused of stealing 3.3 million Barbados dollars belonging to CLICO International Life Insurance Limited between December 1st, 2008 and April 27th, 2009. He's also accused of conspiring with other people to defraud CLICO of the same amount of money by inducing the insurance company to pay the money to Thompson and Associates. Paris of number 8 Darrell's Heights, St. Michael, is also charged for failing to submit tax returns on his income for the year ending March 31st, 2010. The 4th charge is that he engaged in money laundering, where he concealed $3.3 million, which were the proceeds of crime, sometime between December 1st, 2008 and April 27th, 2009. Paris was not required to plead to the indictable charges when he appeared before Magistrate Christy Cuffy Sargent at the District A Criminal Court. He was granted bail with 2 sureties, and as part of the bail conditions, the former insurance executive was ordered to surrender his travel documents and report to the Glebe Police Station every Monday and Friday before noon with valid identification. He returns to court on November 19th. He's represented by Queen's Counsels Hal Gollop, Michael Yearwood and Michael Lashley, as well as attorney Neil Marshall. Now, CLICO collapsed about a decade ago. The company was placed in judicial management and was eventually taken over by government, which paid off much of its debts. When it collapsed, tens of millions of dollars in pension contributions, policyholder funds and deposits had been put in jeopardy. In the ensuing years, policyholders came together to recover either some or all of their investments, but some measure of success was only achieved over the last 3 years with the establishment of legislation. More recently, government significantly advanced the progress to reimburse affected policyholders through a combination of cash and bonds. Much of the work to make that a reality was carried out by the former Resolution Life or ResLife, which completed the bulk of its work over the past year. Lisa Broom, CBC News.
A freak accident at the Barinda Cox Fish Market this evening has claimed the life of a fish vendor while leaving another nursing injuries. That is 74-year-old Rita Hunt of Upper Carter's Gap in Christchurch. Now, our photographer Chris Wood was on the scene to capture this video of the immediate aftermath of that accident. According to police, Miss Hunt was pinned to a pole at the market by a vehicle that accelerated across the car park and mounted the sidewalk before colliding with her and 63-year-old Dorothy Hall of Sears Court in Christchurch. Ms. Hall complained of injuries to her right foot. Police Public Relations Officer Inspector Rodney Innes briefed CBC shortly after arriving on the scene.
On arrival, it was described as pure pandemonium. They had a lot of persons running around. And we noticed that a vehicle had struck 2 pedestrians. What was described as a vehicle that was previously parked. The driver entered the vehicle to drive away and for some reason lost control, and it went right over through the car park, right mounted a 6-inch pavement and struck the 2 females. The more serious of the victims was a 74-year-old female. She was taken away by ambulance to the hospital. The other injuries, not so serious, but still injuries nonetheless, she was taken away by a second ambulance.
And police later confirmed that Ms. Hunt had passed away. When word of this reached the market, many who had gathered around the accident broke down in tears. According to police, the driver of the vehicle did not report any injuries. More than 14,000 people have applied to the Barbados Vulnerable Family Survival Program. Word of this from Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on Poverty Alleviation and Head of the Household Mitigation Unit, Corey Lane. Now, the program, which was launched in March, was initially expected to benefit the country's 1,500 most vulnerable families by providing a monthly $600 grant for 3 months. But given the dire needs of some households, Mr. Lane says the program, which is now closed to new applicants, has again been expanded. To date, over 5,000 applications have been approved for assistance. The unit is also looking for mechanisms to help others.
So there's the Welfare Department, Poverty Alleviation Bureau that we've been asked to refer persons to so that make sure that we really don't want anybody slipping through the cracks or the safety net. So they'll be referred there. But the persons who registered already, we're working around the clock. And when I say around the clock, I mean around the clock to ensure that we get the assistance out to those persons who would have registered before. There are a number of persons who would have registered a while back, and I know that it's very frustrating for them. And we are doing all in our power to ensure that the most needy, the most vulnerable among those get.
Mr. Lane was speaking during a presentation of prepaid food vouchers by the Rotary Club of Barbados West to the Household Mitigation Unit. Jordan Supermarket has once again come on board and will be accepting those vouchers, which will be given to families in urgent need of food while they await the next disbursement of grants. President of the Rotary Club of Barbados West, Jean St. John, says the donation is part of ongoing efforts to help families in need of assistance.
Every Christmas and Easter, we would provide deserving families with hampers. This year, due to the crisis, our members were unable to get into society and to deliver our hampers directly. So we made a decision that we were going to work with the Home Mitigation Unit, headed by Mr. Corey Lane. And so this evening, we are donating $10,000 worth of vouchers.
New legislation will see owners as well as drivers of public service vehicles subject to new regulations. This from Minister of Information, Broadcasting and Public Affairs, Senator Lucille Moe, during debate on the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020. She says while the sector has faced substantial criticism over the years, it is not all bad, and legislation will bring structure and order to it.
These regulations that are being considered within the provisions that we're speaking about today, Mr. President, also having regulations for owners as well, and not just drivers, but for owners as well, in order to try to bring some level of balance and some level of compliance within the sector.
No further changes coming to the sector under the legislation include stands designated for different types of vehicles and set loading areas. Senator Moe says offences will also be penalized differently.
The bill decriminalizes offences in respect of public service vehicles and regulates those offences by imposing fines. The regulations actually bring in something called the 3-strike rule. And what that rule is, Mr. President, for the first offense, you will be fined. For the second offense, you'll be fined again. But for the third offense, you may stand to lose your permit and or your driver's license.
Meanwhile, in his contribution to the debate, Opposition Senator Caswell Franklin has called for a change in the way that PSV drivers are paid.
Something needs to be done with the sector. And I hear people say, oh, it is just a few too many. I know people who own minibuses and stuff, and they try to put some discipline in place, but in the end, the way you pay these people don't allow them to behave very well, because you get paid in the dollar. So the more dollars you make, the more money you can make.
Barbados Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Elizabeth Thompson, wants to see an end to stigma and discrimination towards COVID-19 positive patients and those who have recovered from the condition. The ambassador expressed the view as she responded to questions from the media about a recent diagnosis and recovery from COVID-19. Now, last month, it was announced that Ambassador Thompson had tested positive for the virus when she returned to Barbados from the United States to visit her gravely ill mother. She was admitted to the Harrison's Point isolation facility and recovered after spending 22 days there.
I'm fascinated by the disease because there is no stage at which I felt unwell at all. I never had any visible symptoms at all. No coughing, no sneezing, no runny nose. I never had any symptoms. When I came, I felt well. I had no reason at all to believe that I was ill. I mean, clearly, had I known I was ill, there's no way I would have endangered my mother or my family. So and I continued throughout the time that I was at Harrison Point to feel well. We learned, because I was in a medical facility where I was tested 6 times a day, that there were things that were going wrong internally, but I never felt any manifestation of it. My family has had a very difficult time because of the social stigmatization. Nobody in my family has been ill. My mother has a heart condition, you know. So there are people who are making it much more difficult for themselves and for people who are returning to society having been treated for the disease.
While describing the experience as a personal emotional upheaval, Ambassador Thompson praised local health officials for their efforts.
I bow to Corey Ford, Dr. Corey Ford, the consultant, who is the infectious disease specialist that leads the professionals here in Barbados. I know that the people see the CMO from the perspective of policy, but in terms of the design of the treatment, the facilities, the care, the interventions that are done to save people's lives.
While the ongoing tablet drive mounted by the Ministry of Education has received a boost thanks to Barbadian staff members of the United Nations based at New York. This morning, Ambassador Thompson presented a selection of tablets, laptops and 10 temperature scanners to Education Minister Santia Bradshaw. Ambassador Thompson says the 15 donors have provided the devices to assist students with their studies.
Some of them contributed 2 devices, some contributed 1. So the boxes contain 21 Alcatel IT tablets with keyboards, which would be suitable for the use in the primary school system. There are 2 Hewlett-Packard 14-inch laptops that have 4 gigabytes of memory.
And the Education Minister thanked the Barbadian UN employees for presenting the items, noting they will play a key role in the ministry's plans.
Beyond COVID, the need for technology has not missed this ministry. I'm really planning for September because I believe that there's nothing anymore that is certain. When September comes, we don't know whether or not, as we prepare to go back into school, whether we will be still in this environment with restrictions on our movement and certainly on public transportation. And therefore, the ministry's attention has been being engaged as it relates to trying to see what are the options available to us to ensure that children may be able to have some time at school, but also to be able to have devices that they can continue their education.
While many Barbadians were at home during the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic, hundreds of brave men and women made a daily sacrifice to ensure that the country kept running. We salute these Barbadians with our Newsnight series On the Frontline.
This is Marsha Mears, a dedicated security officer stationed at the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation.
Well, during this time is like a little difficult, but at the same time, I try to carry out my duties in that when everybody come, I try to make sure that they test their temperature, because if it's 38 and up, you know you can come in, you have to contact the Ministry of Health and stuff. Then I also make sure they sanitize, as well as I make sure I sanitize too as well. and just do what I normally would do. It was, honestly, it was like you want to be home some days when everybody home, but at the same time you can't be home when you have your duty to perform and to make money. So I just used to come along, get some motivation, just make sure I put on my mask, make sure I sanitize, just try my best. We matter too. And yes, we have challenges, but in life it's how you go about things. I am Marsha Mears and I'm on the front line.
Canadians are eager to travel to destinations like Barbados again. In an interview with CBC News, Barbados High Commissioner to Canada Reginald Farley says pressure is being placed on the government there by travel industry executives to relax the restrictions on travel to countries where COVID-19 is under control.
The Prime Minister indicated that those matters are under consideration and the government will make some announcements shortly. The relation to travel with Canada and the Caribbean, generally Barbados in particular, clearly there are a couple of issues. One, there's still Caribbean folks here, Barbadians included, who want to get back home following flights that were cancelled previously. And there are also people Canadians who live and work in Barbados, either who want to get back there as well. And similarly, we have Barbadian temporary foreign workers who need to get to Canada to start the work in their seasonal areas. So there's essential business travel which has been held up a bit. People are anxious to resume.
But the High Commissioner says regular tourist traffic remains highly discretionary.
The government of Canada is still encouraging folks not to do non-essential travel, but I think that once the public is satisfied that air travel is safe, that the governments on the two ends of travel have adequate protocols in place, and the airline industry and the airports have proper cleaning and other public safety protocols in place, travel will resume. It will be a little slow at first, but it will pick up over time. So there is interest in travel between Canada and Barbados, first by those who live in one country but are currently trapped in the other, by those who work and have business between the countries, and thirdly, those who would like to get a break from their current circumstances and have a little holiday in the sun.
Information Minister Senator Lucille Moe has added her voice to those paying tribute to Nation photojournalist Christophe Griffith and subcontractor Glenroy James, both of whom were killed while on duty on Monday. Noting this is the first time in memory a member of the media was killed in the line of duty, Senator Moe said it has caused people to consider the vital role played by members of the profession. According to her, very often people do not spare a thought for the human beings who are on the front line, sometimes risking life and limb to bring important information. Reflecting on last year's bold daylight murder at Sheraton Mall, where Christophe himself and other journalists were present at the time, the senator says the incidents raised the question of the safety of media workers. Senator Moe notes the grim turn of events on Monday will cause a reflection on measures that can better protect media professionals as they undertake assignments that may be dangerous. She has acknowledged that all reports indicate the young photographer was not only dedicated to his job, but was of good character with a promising future ahead of him. And she has extended condolences to his family, friends, and colleagues in the media on behalf of the Ministry of Information, Broadcasting, and Public Affairs. And the Barbados Association of Journalists and Media Workers is planning to honor slain photojournalist Christophe Griffith. President of Barjam, Emmanuel Joseph, says there is a proposal to name the Rookie of the Year award after him.
Which means once we come to a final agreement, it will be called the Christophe Griffith Rookie Award of the Year. And I think that was a really, really fitting suggestion. And therefore that will be a permanent memorial for a young man of great potential.
And Barjam will also be convening an extraordinary general meeting for tomorrow from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Kensington Oval. The overarching theme of the meeting is charting a path for safer, decent work and pay for media practitioners. All media workers, full-time, freelance and part-time, are invited to attend. Coming up, we'll look at some of the stories making headlines across our region. But first, this tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Did you know insurance is the most economically feasible option to cover large losses or high-risk exposures? Cooperators General Insurance, ensuring you're protected during this hurricane season.
Regional news now. Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield has submitted his report to the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, showing that the ruling coalition, a partnership for national unity, has won the disputed March 2nd regional and general elections. We get more now in this report from Gordon Mosley.
In the report, the Chief Election Officer said he has taken guidance of the Court of Appeal ruling in the Eslin David versus GCOM case that determined the words "more votes than" as stated in the Constitution means more valid votes. He said his submission shows the valid and credible votes in accordance with the Representation of the People Act. In the attached submissions, the CEO declared that 171,825 valid votes were cast for the APNU-AFC, while 166,343 valid votes were cast for the People's Progressive Party. Based on his calculation, the APNU-AFC will have 33 seats in the National Assembly, with the PP Civic gaining 31 seats and the parties on the joint list gaining 1 seat. The final report to the chair and members of the commission differs from the total vote recount. It appears to have reduced votes from the two major parties based on votes that could not be determined to be credible and valid. Based on the final report, the APNU-AFC has lost over 40,000 votes.
An attorney and the Attorney General appear to be on a collision course in Grenada over an asylum seeker. Now, the attorney is asking that her client be released from prison, but the AG says not so fast. GBN reports.
A local attorney at law representing a citizen of Ghana seeking asylum in Grenada says the United Nations has requested government to release her client. Erica Willis told GBN in an exclusive interview on Tuesday that her client was deemed eligible for asylum.
For approximately 10 weeks, I have been seeking the release of an individual who landed in Grenada to seek asylum. Of course, as Grenada has not enacted the appropriate laws, I was required to seek the intervention of the United Nations. I had just a few days ago received an email from them stating that they have requested that the government releases the asylum seeker. So I would like to make it known to my fellow citizens of Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique that our prayers have been answered. So we are hoping that the government will release our brother.
GBN contacted Attorney General Dashan Randani for a response and spoke with him via telephone on Tuesday.
The UN has not requested that, and anyone who reads that document or seen it would realize that, and I've actually stated the words very clearly. What is being asked, any assistance accorded to the above-named individual would be most appreciated. That can't be misconstrued or can't be construed on the present circumstances to mean that we must release this gentleman without more into the Grenadian society. This is a man who has entered Grenada illegally. This is a man in relation to whom an order has been made to be detained pending deportation.